Hey, everybody. Welcome to another live FL Teams broadcast. Uh, we're here to talk baseball and the baseball lockout. Uh, none of us are happy about it, as I'm sure nobody listening is happy about it or watching. Uh, Before we get into it, Jeremiah, tell us about our sponsor today.
Our wonderful sponsor, as always, we all know is Symbol. Symbol is the stock market for sports. Basically, lets you trade sports teams like their stocks. You can earn cash payouts when your team wins. Symbol has blended sports and the stock market to offer you a chance and a way to invest and profit off your favorite teams. Use your sports knowledge to buy low, sell high, and earn cash payouts when your team wins. Join the already 6,000 plus early adapters who have started profiting off of their sports knowledge by heading over to Symbol www.symbol.com, or you can visit the link that we are scrolling for you there at the bottom so conveniently. And when you open up your account, make sure you use the promo code FL Teams. That'll get you a $10 deposit bonus to start building your portfolio. And I don't know if they'll allow you to buy baseball teams yet, but now might be a good time.
Yeah, buy low, sell high.
Right?
Unfortunately, it's going to be a while before any of us can earn cash payouts on those teams, but we'll get into that a little. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Macolino. I host Bolts and Bats in the Bay on this lovely website for FL Teams. We're joined by the founder and owner of FL Teams, the great Isaac Edelman.
How's it going, Jeff and Jeremiah? I do want to reiterate what you said about no one watching this is happy about baseball being gone. I do want to, acknowledge the parents. Maybe they don't want their kids to be watching baseball and they want them to do homework, but that's besides the point.
Valid,
also,
valid.
also here is Jeremiah Hensley, who you all know well from not only Fins in the Sea, but for many of these podcasts. And he's wearing a Dodgers hat, but that's all right. He's still okay.
Look, hey, I'm happy to be here, man. I always have fun with these. And for Isaac to grace us with his presence, the man behind the scenes that makes it all drive, man, this is going to be a good time.
Yeah. Now, we're not talking about a fun topic, though. We're talking Major League Baseball, which can be a fun topic, but not right now. They're in a lockout, and was just announced the first two series of the regular season for each team has been canceled. Now, there is some discussion about that potentially still being able to be made up. We'll see how long it drags on for. So we want to talk about some of these issues, and frankly, touch on what AJ from the AJ show just pointed out. Baseball's going to lose so many fans with this going on. Yeah. uh, it's not good for business. This is going to be now. Obviously, this was not a labor dispute, but this is going to be probably the second season out of three that's going to be shortened. That's not. I don't think that's good for business for Major League Baseball. They averaged barely over 17,000 fans in stadiums last season as it was. The revenue's still going up because of the TV money. So, I mean, they do have that going for them. But, a long lockout makes you wonder where they're going to sit in the order of where people care. We've got the NFL, which is obviously the king of all sports. College football is probably second, I would guess. The NBA, the NHL is on the rise. They're doing a lot of fun and creative things. Major League Baseball, hasn't changed all that much. And one of the changes they made the last couple seasons, I thought was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. That runner started at second base in extra innings. Dumbest thing I've ever seen. But we don't need to worry about that one for now. So there's a lot of issues. The only thing that I think I've been able to confirm that the owners and the players have agreed on is the universal DH, and they did agree to get rid of the draft pick compensation for signing a free agent. Now, frankly, I do think that kind of hurts the small market teams a little bit because I know the Rays benefited from getting multiple first-round picks by losing some of their free agents. that probably just means that they will trade more players before they actually reach free agency in the last half of their contract. But those seem to be the only two things that, major issues that they've actually come to an agreement on. Just taking an overview of the whole thing, Isaac, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the state of where things are? Is he making noise?
You think he's on mute? No.
I'm here.
There he is.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
I thought I might have gone deaf.
Well, Jeff, there's so many different perspectives to this. There's a player's perspective, a business perspective, an owner's perspective, and a fan's perspective. But I think what each perspective can agree on is the fact that baseball is going downhill. I know, Jeff, you already brought that up. I know AJ, who commented, brought that up. Baseball is going to lose fans. I remember when the KBO became the biggest thing, right? When there was no baseball, there was the KBO. And I remember people woke up at 4 a.m. to watch the KBO league. And it was popular for a few weeks. I could see that coming back because the MLB, like you said, Jeff, is going downhill. And I don't see baseball returning for a while because you also have to consider the fact that these meetings are nothing but quick. You also need to have a training period with the team. You don't necessarily need to have scrimmage games or spring training games, but I do think that will likely happen. But we're looking at weeks to potentially months until baseball returns. But I think what we can also confirm, aside from the universal DH and the compensation, is also the fact that MLB is not postponing any games. They're just going to cancel them. And they've already canceled the first 2 series of the season. So that's really where I stand at right now. There's a lot to take in. It's confusing. But bottom line, it's disappointing. And it's a bad look for the MLB.
I couldn't agree more. It's a dangerous game. It's a standoff that these guys on both sides either don't see or just don't care about. Because this baseball was America's pastime, quote unquote, right? The great of everything. And it slowly started to drop over and over. I live outside of Philadelphia. Philadelphia is one of the craziest sports towns that you'll ever come across for all their teams. Last year, you could go to Phillies games, and it wasn't pandemic related. It was people not showing up. I mean, the people aren't going to the stadiums anymore. Even baseball fans who are a little more diehard, if you're out of market like me, you may watch them on TV, but coming to live games and doing that has already started to diminish. And the last time, this is the first quote unquote, like work stoppage or missed games. Or works in like 27 years, man, that you're going to miss games, right? The first ever lockout where games will be missed. The only other time we've missed games is it's been a strike. And the last time this happened, baseball almost died then. And there weren't as many options. The only thing that brought it back was Cal Ripken breaking the streak. And then Bonds, Sosa, and McGuire started blasting homers and people got engaged again. You stretch this out too far, man. I think it's going to be very tough to rebound at all. I mean, it's crazy, man. It's a bad look for everybody involved. The worst part is I think we can confirm also that the other thing they agreed on was the 12-team format for playoffs. So changing the playoffs to that.
Well, the players apparently said that if they do not get compensation for the full season, meaning, if those 6 games per team that were canceled, if they still don't get paid for them, they're refusing to expand the playoffs. Now, I assume that's a negotiation tactic like a lot of these things. But as Isaac pointed out, these negotiations have not been, goodness. In my old job, I did legal mediations, and they sometimes dragged on for 6 to 8 hours. These guys can't stay in a room for more than 15 minutes together to try to mediate their issues before just saying, we're done, we're out. I said this to you earlier when we were talking online, Jeremiah. when billionaires and millionaires fight, and the only people who are really suffering are regular people. And I mean that in multiple ways. Fans of baseball aren't getting what they want. Stadium workers aren't getting paychecks. I used to work for the Rays. I was hourly at the time in the front office, and I would have lost money for, or, if this drags out, some teams might start just getting rid of people. They're the people who work on an hourly basis who are going to be losing money. The baseball players who were bragging about having a stockpile of cash because some investment that they have in some kind of online gambling type thing, I don't think that's a good look either. Saying, hey, we're rich. We don't care how much. It's like it's kind of tone deaf, which again, I don't think sets a good image for baseball out there. And I'm not trying to say this as some sort of, hippy dippy person. It's just a bad look when, and again, I understand a lot of what the players are fighting for, because baseball has for a long time been the league that to me didn't make sense the way they structured it. I mean, football, they share revenue, they have a salary cap, they have a minimum, every team is on a pretty level playing field. It's just, some teams' owners are dumb and some are great. And, that's really the bottom line in football. Basketball and hockey are the same way. There's a salary cap. Sure, you can find workarounds like the long-term IR to, get a guy to come back for the playoffs and win you a back-to-back Stanley Cup. But baseball, is kind of the wild, wild west. And frankly, the Rays are the team that actually kind of broke that down starting in 2008, because they still never spend nearly as much as the big boys, and they've been one of the most.
Oh, did we freeze up? There it is.
So, I do hope that the rules that get changed don't just benefit the big markets. Which the expanded playoffs presumably help everyone if that does happen. I'm not sure how you're going to maneuver the playoffs with 12 teams in baseball. I
think the talk they gave were divisions stay the same. 3 division winners go in, and 2 get a bye. And then you've got your wild cards underneath that. So you're going to end up with 3 wild cards, basically.
And that can be a detriment almost to the teams taking the bye week. I mean, you get a real rusty real quick as a hitter. Now, obviously, your pitching staff can benefit from having a few extra days off. But if you're, a position player who's played every day for 6 months, and now you have to go to the playoffs after being off for 4 or 5 days or a week, whatever it's going to be, I feel like that has some unintended consequences as well. It's not like football where a bye week is like, all right, we're not going to lose 5 players to injury this week. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think what was interesting about, I know it's all in a negotiation, but when they're canceling the first 2 series and they're basically saying, you're not making them up and we're not going to pay you for them, it's just like throwing fuel on the fire, right? Even if you were close to a deal, now you've added another stipulation because the players aren't going to lay down and take that. And the owners are now standing on, we're not going to pay you for it. So it's just going to be another obstacle to overcome. And it is funny, Isaac, you mentioned it, like how the meetings were quick. I think when Manfred was giving his press conference, they asked why it's dragging on. And he kind of insinuated, he was like, well, these meetings, we've been here for 9 days. But the only significant movement has been the last 24 hours.
Exactly.
So it's like there's no urgency.
Something to consider is, right, and I know Jeff kind of brought this up, the owners, right? If we're talking about the Florida teams, the Rays and Marlins, we don't like to spend a lot of money. But then you look at someone like Steve Cohen of the Mets. He loves to spend money, right? So there's already going to be disagreements there. And that's just between the owners in one meeting. Then once they finally agree, which hasn't even happened yet, you then have to agree with the players. But why I said these meetings are quick, the meetings are ending, right? Like after 15 minutes. And that's why you see meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, meeting 4, meeting 5, up to like meeting 11. There's there should just be such thing as one meeting that lasts for 9 days instead of 11 meetings that go across 11 days. It just seems like the MLB is disjointed. Nothing is going right. And it looks like it's just pieces that need to build up to success. And one puzzle piece is not even falling. So I don't know what to say. I don't know if the MLB is going to solve their problem. But bottom line, we can't just talk about the players, the owners, the fans. I mean, communities and businesses that are relying on baseball are literally, suffering. And they're going to continue to suffer for weeks to months. I know that's really hard to hear, but that's reality because, again, these meetings are quick but long in a way. And nothing is going right for baseball. One thing to consider, baseball just needs to understand that players want to play. There could be disagreements, but as long as baseball starts, fans will be happy and businesses will be happy. I think that's what just needs to happen. I think that no matter how many teams make the playoffs, I think no matter, how much money players get, baseball just needs to happen. I think you guys can agree with that.
Yeah.
100.
The lack of urgency is quite concerning. Because, Isaac, you did bring this up also, is baseball is different than the other three major sports. Football, basketball, hockey. I would bet within 2 weeks you could start the regular season in those sports. They might be rusty the first few weeks, but physically, within 2 weeks, going to train practice with their team, they could be ready to go. Baseball's not like that. Pitchers, spring training is long for a reason. Pitchers have to build up their arm. The regular person doesn't understand how hard it is being a position player either, where you have to be able to swing the bat 500 times a day for 6-7 days a week and do all the work in the field. Baseball's a sport of repetition. If they tried to start a season cold, first of all, pitchers would be going 2-3 innings to start the season, starting pitchers, which for the Rays isn't that abnormal, but for other teams, it would be a shock to the system. Position players would only be able to play every other day for the first couple weeks until they kind of got their legs and their back and shoulders kind of back into the system.
And that's where a team like the Marlins benefit because their players only play 1 or 2 days in a row. So everything's falling in place for the Florida teams. Before Jeremiah, sorry to cut you off, but Jeff, I saw something, and you're like this because you went to USF. Aaron Judge and other Yankee players are practicing in the morning at USF baseball field. So that says something funny. So players are practicing, but yes, they need to practice as a team, and pitchers especially need to build up. And that's why pitchers and catchers always report way earlier than the regular position players.
Exactly.
Yeah, so 2 points on that. It's one, I think that's what MLB and the Players Association came to the conclusion on the shortened season because of the pandemic. When they rushed that short spring training, injuries went up significantly. So that was an issue. So this time they're saying they don't want to crush the time off of spring training in order to maintain, healthier players going through. But you guys, Isaac, you mentioned something, and Jeff too. Jeff, you talk about how it impacts the people who work in the stadium or with the organizations. And then Isaac, you talked about the communities. You guys fill me in. I'm not in Florida, but my understanding has always been spring training is the lifeblood of some cities in Florida, right? That's their economy almost. So how is that affected, or what are you guys seeing in that? Because, it's got to be shut down, and that's got to hurt.
Well, I'm going to talk from a fan's perspective. I guess, Jeff, if you want to talk about it from a business perspective, because you've worked as part of the Rays front office. But for me, I live in South Florida. I always went up to Jupiter to see the Marlins. I always went up to Port St. Lucie to see the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
Spring training workouts were amazing. I didn't even go to spring training games. I went to the workouts where you just saw players training and then you got autographs from them. It was just amazing. And you saw so many people with St. Louis Cardinals jerseys, Met jerseys. The Cardinals don't play in Florida. That answers your question, Jeremiah. Spring training is huge. The restaurants around the spring training facilities were booming, and also hotels. I mean, I know some players. I know Max Scherzer has a home in Port St. Lucie. He's now on the Mets. But, players, some, rented condos, were in hotels. I mean, it was business. So, yes, to answer your question, simply, yes, spring training businesses are losing out on a lot. And again, I really think that the MLB needs to have spring training games or scrimmage games before the season. I just don't know if it will be in MLB teams' regular stadiums, right? And you travel to play a team in a scrimmage game, or whether it will be at spring training facilities. That I don't know. But Jeff, what do you think from a business perspective?
Well, so there's two things. One from the Rays, and they're going to Port Charlotte. I know how much, and I didn't even deal with it, but I knew how much strain went into renting houses for players and staff. And then they also had Major League Baseball players with Major League money hanging out in their city for almost 2 months and spending their money in their city. It's a substantial deal, and it does. One thing I think baseball suffers from is marketable players, and it does, to what Isaac said, it does mean something when you can go, across the street to the local park and just take pictures with all-star players on whatever random team, and guess what? Now you're a fan of that team.
Exactly.
And these are cities, in Arizona and in Florida that, I mean, there are major league teams in both states, but, not in every city that hosts a spring training.
It's also a different vibe, by the way. Spring
Yeah.
training games, you sit on the berm out in the sun. It feels very different. It feels like your Little League baseball game, which I know Jeff knows a lot about.
Well, and that's
And
the other part
Jeremiah
of
for
it is,
coaching their kids. So it's just a different vibe.
well, if they start spring training in even 2 weeks, you've missed the nice weather part in Florida. You're going to now be moving, instead of, games being played in the 70s and sunny, going to be played in 95
95 and rainy.
degrees.
Right.
And yeah, probably rainy quite a bit too. So that's the other factor that I think, I don't know if they can do these games. The other thing is, I drive to Dunedin every once in a while. It's in the same county, and their sign, "Welcome to Dunedin," has the Blue Jays logo on it.
Right.
Like, they take pride in the fact that's the spring training home of the Toronto Blue Jays. And obviously that Dunedin Blue Jays in the minor leagues, but that's something when you drive into these cities, and I'm sure it's like that in many of these cities. They've got the logo for the team who plays spring training ball there because they have pride. There's Blue Jays fans in Dunedin because the Blue Jays are there every year.
I've been to a lot of Mets restaurants, and I say Mets restaurants. Hey, it's just restaurants in Port St. Lucie. They're literally Mets restaurants. You go in there, you're sitting at a table. What's to the left of you? What's to the right of you? An artwork, right? That has the Mets on it, or an autograph signed by a Mets player. It's literally a MLB town, but for a few months, right? And guess what? In 2022, it might be 0 months, and that's what's scary.
I'll go with a sentimental version on this thing too, man, because I played baseball up until college. Baseball will always have a very special place in my heart for what it did for me as a kid and the connections that I grew. I knew families who planned their vacations around spring training, fathers and sons getting together like Philly fans and coming to Florida and staying by the Phillies, their training camp. And that was like their father-son moment, right? And that's where baseball used to be. It used to connect in the heart, at least for me. It was the sport that you drew into and you got to know the players. You see the players, all of those things. And it's going away. Now, the other fan perspective is when you shorten spring training, you're also hurting the development of your franchise. Spring training is sometimes when that AA guy shows that all of a sudden his bat's AAA, right? Or his bat might be major league. But if you don't get that 3 to 4 weeks to see that, then this guy's going to be bounced back over to Toledo somewhere, right? And grind his way back up. So, I mean, there's just so many ripple effects of all of that and pushing it back.
Thanks for bringing that up, Jeremiah. I should have brought that up. As a Marlins fan, the Marlins are the champions of spring training every year. Every single year they have the best record. And it's probably because they have such a good farm system and, prospects always play in spring training. But in all seriousness, and this is not even highlighting the Marlins, yes, players need to get playing time in order to show what skills they got. Spring training provided just that.
Yeah. And I think, Jeff, you mentioned, or some of the other things that are holdups, it gets back to money now. And I think one of the things both you guys expressed, Florida teams don't spend a lot of money. I don't know people of fans of teams who do spend a lot of money, but this whole CBT thing is holding it up too, right? The competitive balance threshold or whatever. It's basically their soft salary cap.
Yeah,
right?
the luxury tax.
So, right, the luxury tax. So they moved it up like $10 million from like 210 to 220, and that's on the owner side. The player side wants way more than that. They want it higher than that, which is to me sometimes the exact opposite. Because I have friends who are like Pirate fans, and they talk about the competitive balance where they're like, "Oh, it's out of whack. These owners just throw money at everything." It's actually the owners are trying to bring it down. And the players want it more, which I understand. Higher they can go, more money gets spent. But I thought that was a unique thing because I think the perception was the owners were the ones just trying to throw cash at it. And turns out it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I was surprised that they've been pretty hard line in not wanting to go up much. And they're year by year, they don't want to raise it they want to raise it to 220 and keep it there for a few years and then raise it another couple million. And I was surprised that there was that much. And I don't know what went on behind closed doors because I can't imagine the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets, the Dodgers. I can't imagine those teams saying, yeah, I want to keep the luxury tax low. I'm happy to help pay. You think Yankees and Red Sox ownership is happy to fork over money to the Rays who kick their butt half the time? I mean, I would think they would be more opposed to that. And maybe they were, but majority kind of rules out in that. The unfortunate thing is it does seem most of what the players want, and I get it. I get it completely, but most of what they want would seem to negatively affect competitive balance and parity in the sport, which I don't think is good for the league.
No.
So I do understand where both sides are coming from is, look, if you're just going to go back and say the Rays can never compete because they don't have the money, like the Rays were in their first, 20 years of existence, lost a market that you just committed to by shutting down that ridiculous Montreal sister city garbage. And not just the Tampa Bay market. Let's be clear. There's 15 other markets across the country that would basically be told if we raise the luxury tax to a level where teams can pretty much go back to spending a ridiculous amount of money 5 to 10 times what other teams in their division can spend. It's not going to be good for competitive balance. It's going to be the same handful of teams every year, and then the next dozen that kind of ebb and flow, and there's going to be the rest are just going to be toilet teams that can maybe scratch and claw their way to the playoffs every once in a while. And I don't think that's good for the long-term view of the sport either. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, with the way mercenary teams are the fad in the NBA and frankly, the last 2 years in the NFL also. Maybe I'm wrong. I know the NFL's not suffering in viewership or money.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure. I think arguably the best game of the MLB season last year was the Field of Dreams game, in which the Yankees and White Sox faced off. There's really no rivalry between those two teams, but what happened was offense was clicking. We later found out that, MLB was using certain baseballs that allowed more home runs to be hit, right? That's a possibility. Anything to increase viewership. I know. And this is why baseball, unlike the NFL, is kind of hard because baseball has changed much more than the NFL has, right? The NFL has changed in terms of, protecting the quarterback, but not in terms of scoring, right? But baseball is totally different. And that's why some older people don't want any changes to happen, but some younger people like myself want some changes to happen. But one thing is for sure, there is discussions surrounding the possibility of cap space in the MLB. And one thing's for sure, the two Florida teams, the Rays and Marlins, would be all for it because we never get close to a cap space limit. And another thing, when this lockout ends, free agency is going to be crazy. And I think we need to bring that up. Freddie Freeman, the reigning MVP, is a free agent. Think about that. The reigning MVP is not on a team right now. And who is he working out with? He can work out with Aaron Judge. He can work out with Francisco Lindor, but he doesn't know who his teammate is going to be. And guess what? You can't talk to any owners. You can't talk to anyone about being on their team or not being on their team. So players like Freddie Freeman and even minor leaguers, guess what? The minor league season is going on. Maybe the minor league should be the new KBO, right? Maybe, the minor league should be hyped up. I don't know.
It probably will if if there's no Major League Baseball action to televise. But no, that was something I wanted to bring up too. You've got Freddie Freeman. I mean, a lot of Kyle Seager, Chris Bryant, Carlos Correa, Trevor Story. You've got some star players sitting out there unsigned because you're not allowed. Clayton Kershaw.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some star guys sitting out there unsigned. That again, they're going to need to get into a camp, and even if they've been practicing on their own or with other guys, there's going to be a little bit of a awkward situation, and who knows if the way negotiations with the labor agreement are going. I'm guessing there's not been a lot of illegal tampering going on behind the scenes. I'm guessing. I could be wrong. At least not from the owner side to the players. Maybe player to player, they might be trying to recruit each other, but that's always been a thing. But yeah, that and the Rays, if you were paying attention, right before the lockout happened, they made a slew of signings of major league players just to get that done. But yeah, there's going to be some question marks, and what those guys. I mean, there's some star players that worth big money. I guess they're probably the most invested in how this turns out because it's going to make a big difference on what their contract looks like, probably.
Yeah, but one thing's also for sure, the Marlins, and I know you wanted to bring this up, Jeff, are going to be put at a disadvantage. Derek Jeter, the CEO of the Marlins, left, and Derek Jeter was kind of the Marlins' main man in terms of, do the Marlins make a signing or do they not make a signing? Kim Ng, GM of the Marlins, obviously has a huge say, but rumors say that she went through Derek Jeter, right? And now that Derek Jeter left, the Marlins are really going to need to make an urgent push to get a new CEO or even a new assistant just to work with Kim Ng, because once this lockout ends, teams are going to be, literally just grabbing random players just to sign because it's so urgent, and you really only have like a snap of a finger to grab a player. Guess what? I don't even know if the Marlins could make an urgent push with this owner disagreement and all of this. I don't know what you can or can't do, and that's what's confusing. Again, at the beginning of the show, I brought up this MLB lockout is so confusing. I do not know what the Marlins are going to do, because they do have time to find someone, right? This lockout's not close to ending. But on the other hand, do they have time? Because I don't know what you could do with this owner, lockout and the players' lockouts. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But the MLB is not showing urgency. And that was one of the first things you brought up on this show, Jeff. So
And I'm available, by the way, as long as I can work remotely from St. Petersburg. Give me a call. I'll shoot you my info, Miami. But yeah,
I do
I did
think
want to.
it's going to be rapid fire. I think some of the big players are going to throw big contracts really quick, right? So I mean, it's not going to be this free agent visits with 5 teams. I mean, I think they're just going to have guns loaded, and they're just going to start picking them off. They're going to come high. So yeah, smaller market teams are going to have a tough time, Isaac, with or without that front office being together. You know?
I would suspect a lot of big number 1-year deals get thrown out quickly.
Yeah.
Way over market value numbers for just a 1-year deal. Let them know you're getting a nice payday and you'll be able to be a free agent, and work in the new constraints of the system next year.
Hmm. That's interesting. I see someone like Freddie Freeman signing with the Braves. Somehow, if he doesn't, he may sign a 1-year deal because he may want to go back to the Braves. So the Dodgers are also going to be, grabbing players. Do they re-sign Corey Seager? Maybe. I mean, the deal here is you don't have a lot of time to make a decision. And for Corey Seager's brain, for himself, he is going to have multiple teams reaching out to him. He's not in a rush, but the teams are, right? The ownership groups are. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. And guess what? It's going to be hard to make predictions on where a player will end because we don't even know what's going on. We don't even know if there's going to be a shift. I know we wanted to bring that up. If there's going to be a shift or if there's not going to be a shift. I mean, all of these changes can affect a signing. And there is just going to be so much confusion, so much talk about these players in the coming weeks. But again, the lockout is far from being over. I'm going to tell you that. And yeah, we don't need to
As the Dodger affiliate, in our group here, I have to mention Corey Seager was one of the guys who jumped free agent early. Him and Scherzer. Seager got a huge deal from the Rangers, so he's already signed up and done. The same way Scherzer grabbed his big one from the Mets. So
Yes.
yeah, we the Dodgers watched Seager walk, but you know what? Smart front ownership. We traded for Trey Turner last year in that Scherzer deal and played him at second. So we've got a ready-made Gold Glove potential shortstop to slide in where Seager was. It's a luxury.
Andrew Friedman must like going for having to find players for pennies on the dollar to just throwing hundreds of millions of dollars around like a drunken sailor, huh? One thing I think to kind of bring this all full circle, and it ties in with the lockout to an extent, like you mentioned about being able to shift and stuff like that, is baseball losing its grip because, and I say that we're all baseball fans here, so I don't say this disparagingly, but is baseball too boring for people nowadays who have so many options with not only sports, but streaming services and live streamed FL Teams podcasts? I would definitely watch this over a baseball game. I admitted I was talking on my podcast and baseball came up and I talked to a comedian for 10 minutes about it. And he was saying, I can't watch a game. I'll watch a 7-minute highlight clip on YouTube. And I even admitted, I said, I watch almost every Rays game, but I record it and usually fast forward through a lot of it. I mean, or just watch it in double speed because I love Dwayne's stats. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I just don't have time to spend 3.5 hours to watch a 2-0 game that had 12 balls put into play while everyone walked or struck out. It's the style of play. And look, this is a thing that, frankly, teams like the Rays have used as an advantage to make up on other teams. The style of play with analytics is you love a player like Mike Zunino is a great example. He was an all-star and a valuable player for the Rays because he played great defense, but he struck out, he walked, or he hit a home run. Nothing else. Nothing else happened.
Yeah.
And that's the prototypical player. Also taking a lot of pitches, right? That's something I remember the Yankees and Red Sox used to be on the front end of doing back in the early 2000s, where they would get your pitcher out of the game after 5-6 innings. every time because they would take pitches, foul off pitches, just try to walk, hit a home run. If you strike out, you strike out. The balls in play factor is, I believe, if the statistic he told me was correct, is the lowest it's been in history of baseball. Whereas the strikeout rates are up here, and there was I was reading an article today where Major League Baseball did a research, and fans said the most exciting plays were doubles, triples, and stolen bases. Well, stolen bases aren't even in style anymore, really. They're very rare because it's not worth the risk that he gets thrown out. You don't, you try to preserve those outs as much as possible. And again, as a father taking my son to the game, when there's a game where you go 5 minutes between hearing the crack of a bat, that kid's off in la la land. He has no interest in what's going on the field because it's just two guys playing catch.
So look, well, I'll have to get Isaac's feedback on this part of it because I think you're right in the sense that they're trying to make a couple of changes, right? Like the universal DH, which personally I hate. I don't like it, and it'll tie into this. I think baseball started to lose viewership because of the brand of baseball that's being played flat out. It's just like the guys who are shooting three-quarter court, like three-pointers or half point. Yeah, everybody wants that home run. What I loved about baseball, what I still love about baseball, is the chess match. You know, that when guys played traditional baseball, a single, move a guy over, right? You mentioned the shift. It's amazing. Back in the day, if Pete Rose, Ted Williams, those guys were playing, and a defense moved themselves completely to one side of the field, they had practiced and trained well enough that they would easily just hit it where they weren't. Today's hitters are enamored by home runs. That's what it's big cuts. And that used to be the most exciting part of the game, but it also leads to what you talked about, Jeff, a ton of strikeouts. So all those swinging the bats. Look, the Dodgers and Braves series in the playoffs last year, all it was home runs. It was a two-run homer and then a solo homer. Like every game, they didn't manufacture anything. So Isaac, in that where you're at, I mean, does the home run still that appealing to folks like in that younger demographic of watching baseball, or do people appreciate what baseball was, quote unquote?
Well, for people like me who are big baseball fanatics, I love watching, famous plays, right? I am not going to go back and watch every Marlins game for the last 30 years since the beginning of their franchise, but I will watch the biggest plays, right? And I see how baseball was played. I see how players used to barge into the catcher to knock the ball out, right? I saw those plays. But that's why I brought up the Field of Dreams game. You need to have those games because, yes, I want to see home runs. You're still not going to have a player break Barry Bonds' record, but I want to see home runs. And bottom line, if people don't like baseball how it is, then don't watch it. I just think that this is baseball, and this is just how it needs to be. I don't think that baseball needs to make changes such as the shift, the length of the game, blah, blah, blah. I think the length of the game is baseball. I just think that this is how baseball is played. This is just how baseball needs to be to have the full experience. And if you don't want to watch boring baseball, and I put that in quotes because some people think it's boring and some people don't, then don't watch it. I just think that's what it comes down to.
I also think there's an old school versus new school thing with one other thing, which is passion on the field. A lot of bat flipping and excitement is really frowned upon by the older generation, and I might be in that older generation, but I love it. Randy Arozarena is one of my favorite players to watch. Probably my favorite. Not that he did the celebration, but his speed and just he was a human highlight reel. But he brings a level of excitement to the game.
Yeah.
And enjoy yourself. You don't need to. It's not a business meeting. It's a sport. It's a kid's game.
And that's why that Tatis Grand Slam, I'm sure you guys remember that, is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Not the home run, but the topic of him hitting it. It was a full count. It's not that he wants to have another home run on his statue. It's that he wants to have fun. Why So just because the San Diego Padres are doing so good in a baseball game, why should that mean that he should just not hit and just let the full count go by, whether it's a walk or why should that be? Just because your team is playing well should mean nothing. Also,
It's the unwritten rules, Isaac, right? Baseball
yeah,
has so many unwritten rules.
exactly, but so
that
many stupid unwritten rules, right? Because I think bottom line is, whether it's the old generation or young generation, you have to understand that it's allowed because the ump is not yelling at him, right? I know people disagree with the umps all the time, right, regarding ejections, but did the ump say anything? No, right? It's a home run. Did he get a home run counted in his stat sheet? Yes, right?
You angry? The
Yeah.
other guy showed you up. Do better.
I'm with you. Look, as a Dodger fan, I'll tell you what I did love watching them last year. Their whole little thing when they would steal a base or they would get a double or they would get a big hit, they all had that little like stop, like they were rolling the dice. It was like my best moments were in a dugout, having fun like that, right? And enjoying the game the way it is. But I'll say I am old school in the sense that, like, if you ask me who my favorite player is, whether he was on the Dodgers now or not, Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts to me just encompasses everything. He runs, he plays defense, he has an arm, he hits for average, he hits for power. To me, he's an old school guy. We have so many specialists now that they just stick at first base or third base because the guy's got a big bat and he might get a home run when he comes through. It's I personally I miss that part. Like I love situational batting. I loved the Brett Butlers of the world back in the day, the guys that would foul you off 10 times till they got the pitch they wanted. I love that back and forth. So yeah, but the unwritten rule, but you have fun no matter where you're. This is still a kid's game. Remember where you're at.
Amen. All right. Well, I think we're at a good stopping point. I mean, we could go on for eons about baseball.
Well, we can't go on as long as the lockout will go on, but
right.
Put this on in the negotiation room. Make him watch it until they come to a resolution. It'll grease the wheels a little bit, maybe.
You know what? To throw it on the resolution, I did hear that like the behind the scenes part is that the owners have always not really liked April, right? Because April, the kids were still in school. The weather wasn't that great. There were a lot of cancellations. Attendance was down. So they're like, the owners missing a whole month of baseball doesn't affect the owners. They're cool with that, right? Last thing we were wrapping up, something really cool to watch on this, man, is I said something earlier about the players fighting that CBT. What I do think is really cool is if you read a little bit on this and check it out, the old-time veterans are holding out on a lot of things that are not going to affect them at all, right? These big free agents who could be signed at any time, they are really pushing to make sure there's more money in a player pool for the rookies that are coming up. They're also trying to ensure that if that rookie is on the team, he's going to be counted as a year, so teams can't buy an extra year of ownership of the guys coming in early. There's a lot that they're going back toward. And the line that I heard was one of the guys talking about David Ortiz spoke to the player representatives who were going to go there. And Ortiz's whole message was, you're here today because people fought for you to get what you want. Now it's your turn to fight. And they're kind of doing that. And so I think it's kind of cool that they're thinking of the next generation even before themselves here, just to give the players some credit before we roll out,
Agreed. Agreed.
So,
well, to wrap it up, let's quickly go around the room and tell people where they should go to get the best sports coverage. Jeremiah, and drop your social media handle and everything too.
Absolutely, man. You can follow me on Twitter, jfrog817. Always anywhere, man. I love talking sports and being on here. FL Teams is where you're going to find me. So I'm always around doing these. It's fantastic. Not only that, Isaac, I know you'll touch on it, man, but FL Teams is growing leaps and bounds with some unbelievable college coverage that's coming through. Hey, there's your baseball fix, Isaac. Tell them what we got at FL Teams now if they need a baseball fix.
Well, if you need a baseball fix, you can always watch some college baseball, right? That's always an option. We got some talented teams in the state of Florida, whether it's the Florida Gators, Florida State Seminoles, USF Bulls, right? We have a photographer who has attended almost every USF home game. So, hey, even if you're not a writer or podcaster, join the team. We'd love to send you out to sporting events, whether it's photography or anything in between. But yeah, I mean, as the founder of this site, it's just an honor having Jeff and Jeremiah, two amazing podcasters, but also college baseball. I mean, it's fun to watch. It's fun to write about. And photos. I mean, college baseball is much more fun. Let me tell you something. And it's probably because the players are a little bit younger. They like to do bat flips and they like to party when they reach home plate after a home run. So, yeah, if you want to get some good flicks of a home run, watch college baseball because you can't find any home runs in the MLB right now.
The highlight packages and the photography on that have been fantastic, man. They really are. So it's been a cool addition.
Yeah, FL Teams dominating coverage, podcasts, news articles, photos, videos. It's got everything. And I wanted to shout out to Isaac because we just a few weeks ago, without acknowledging it, the 1-year anniversary of starting the podcast. I think Bolts and Bats in the Bay was the first one, and it's still going. So check that out. It's been a little more bolts than bats focused lately for obvious reasons, but but yeah, check that out. Follow FL Teams on all of the social medias. Isaac will, of course, have the links wherever you're watching or listening to this. Isaac, any last words from our fearless leader?
Well, thanks everyone for watching. Yeah, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Make sure to hit the like button. Again, social media at FL Teams. And of course, have our website, flteams.com. If you want sports analysis, opinion, which was a lot of this show because, again, everyone's disagreeing during this time of disappointment in MLB. And also, if you want to see some fantastic just editorials on anything Florida sports related. Again, there are so many teams in the state of Florida. And again, Florida, and especially Tampa Bay, the best sports state and the best sports city in the country.
100. Hey, and Jeff, we'll wrap it up on this. I'm going to throw you your props on it too. Don't forget, not just Bolts and Bats in the Base, but the Jeff Macolino podcast, which is absolutely fantastic as well, man. Hang out with some great comedians and Jeff. It's fun times.
Thank you. I enjoy it myself.
Always good, guys. Always good. Had a great time.
Absolutely. And thanks for everyone who was commenting or watching along with us. I appreciate that.
FL Teams out.